Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Putting the Pieces Together and Gathering Proposals. What an interesting topic, and we've already heard that it is a very important topic for some of you that are joining us today as you prepare for the RFP process. My name is Zuli Marabona, Executive Vice President with KWPMC and partner. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I'm joined by my colleague Alex Martin and along with expert panelists for today's webinar. Today's discussion is all about one of the most important and practical parts of association operations, and it's just that, gathering proposals. Although we may seem like we're simplifying that process, it's not. And so we're going to dive deep into the details, best practices, what not to do, and how to navigate this process as seamless as possible for your associations, and trying to compare pricing, proposal processes, and any major impact on cost. As we know, cost is a major focus, and so is quality, right? So let's move on. Before we dive in, let's go over a few housekeeping items that are very important. Throughout our session today, we are going to open up our Q&A chat, and we welcome all questions. Please participate along with us. We're also going to have a few poll questions throughout the session, and more than likely at the beginning of the session, we'll announce those as well. So please feel free to submit your questions throughout our webinar. And last but not least, please also remember that any information that we cover today and in any of our sessions is really for general purposes only. Anything that is specific to your associations, we kindly ask that you seek your own legal counsel and that you partner with the professionals that are working with you directly to give you specifics. We appreciate your time, and I am going to turn it over to Alex. Thanks again.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Alex Martin, partner over at KWPMC. I'm excited to be part of today's session, gathering proposals, right? May sound simple on the surface. You call a couple vendors, you ask for pricing, compare numbers, and you make a decision. But in practice, there are many moving parts here. There's many moving pieces, and if the scope is unclear, if proposals are not comparable, or if important terms are missed, the process can become confusing very quickly and turn into a nightmare. So today our goal is to provide practical guidance for community associations how to approach proposal gathering in a more organized, transparent, and effective way. And we'll talk about how to define the need, prepare a clear scope of work, identify quality vendors, compare proposals, avoid common mistakes, and help boards make a well-documented decision. So joining us today, we have two very special people today. We have Jason Rogers de Cruz, right? Racing, let me get
Yeah,
it right.
that's
Sorry,
right.
Jason.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason Rogers de Cruz from Siegfried Rivera. He's a shareholder there. And we have our one and only Ashley Ortiz, Regional VP from Southwest Florida with KWPMC. Let's start with introductions. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, everybody. My name again is Jason Rogers de Cruz. I'm an equity shareholder with Siegfried Rivera. If you all don't know about Siegfried Rivera, we've been in the industry for almost 50 years. We are a community association law firm, we're a construction law firm, and we're also a real estate law firm. So we handle the whole gamut when it comes to condos, HOAs, construction projects, and of course, we have a pure construction department that deals with all construction related issues. And then we have real estate department. I specialize in construction litigation, construction trial work, and I also specialize in what we call project delivery or construction projects, which we're going to talk about today. So that's my experience.
Amazing.
Welcome.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you,
Ashley?
Jason.
I am Ashley Ortiz. I'm a regional vice president with KWPMC. I've worked in the property management industry for about 20 years, but have had the pleasure of spending the last almost 10 with my friends and family now at KWPMC. And I'm just excited to be here and to help everyone navigate through this day-to-day, feels like a day-to-day process, because we do it on all different levels and all different scales, but a very important one. So here to help.
Thank you, Ashley.
Amazing.
And thank you both for carving out some time today. Spend with us this hour. Let's start with the poll questions, because I think that'll give us some information we need here to have discussions today. If you can go ahead and answer these questions, that would help us a lot to see where you are in this process. I'll read them out to you here. How often does your association gather proposals for major projects or service?
So if you align with Ashley, it's all the time for
All
various
day.
things.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
there you go. Ashley, you must know what you're talking about.
A
It's a
little
good thing
bit.
you're on this webinar today.
So it's frequently is 76%, occasionally is 24%.
Yeah, I wonder what the distinction is between frequently and occasionally. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a good one, Jason. Let's do this. Why don't we start with what trends are you seeing out there, Jason?
yeah, so I've been handling construction projects for over 20 years, and recently it seems like a lot of the projects I'm either involved in or taking over have a lot of inexperienced people that are not qualified, whether it's an engineer that's not qualified to do the full assessment, prepare plan specifications, or it's a owner's consultant, or it's a subcontractor or a contractor, just simply not qualified to do the work. And number two, that creates a lot of problems, a lot of change orders, a lot of deficiencies with the project. So I tend to get involved with a lot of problem projects, and that's what I'm seeing.
Great. Ashley, what are you seeing? What trends are you seeing on the property management side?
So I think to Jason's point, in addition to new people, right, coming in, maybe that are inexperienced, stepping into the industry because there's a need, we are seeing an increased level of sophistication on the board side. And so our boards are incredibly in tune. We have a lot of professionals investing their time into their associations that are looking for a level of detail and have a level of scrutiny on their expectations. And I think understand the need for bringing in professionals to address the more complex projects. And so it's been refreshing in some cases, right, to have that support where you can say, we need an engineer, we need to bring the attorney in early, we need to have a very specific scope so that the asset gets addressed appropriately. But with that, I think there's the need for, on the management side, the management company to be able to provide and meet those needs and match the sophistication of their boards.
I can jump in here too. I think very well said. And when I think of everything that I just heard, I think of, the act of gathering proposals, depending on the work that it's for or the project that it's for. And I think in every case, it's not just a checkbox, right? You're not just checking the box to say we gathered proposals to justify what the statute requires or to appease the membership, which should never really be the reason, right? We want to make sure that our associations and I think as a board, our boards take this matter very seriously, and so does management, right? So really, it's more than just an administrative task. Is really what we're saying, right? There's so much more to it, and so partnering with the professionals that are involved is very important. So what else can we talk about, Ashley, from your perspective as it relates to transparency throughout the process?
So I think when we're talking about transparency throughout the process, I think that it's knowing, really having the goal, the end goal in mind as we're working through the initial process, right? As far as the complexity, the scope, who we're including, what are the actual needs? When is it time to bring in a project manager? When is it time to use the resources of our management company and the partnerships and the value optimization opportunities of your management company, and supplying those things to your board so that early on, so that they can make the best decision on the front end, as opposed to change orders and damage control and lawsuits on the back end.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because it starts with you all. And if you all are, or the managers are educating the board what to look for, at the end of the day, you're not offering legal advice, but you're telling them, look, these are the people we worked for before. This is the protocol. These are the steps. These are the things that you should consider. and moving forward with a successful project, because there is an order to it, and there is an appropriate order that I think should always be followed, and it's a formula. So, for example, I do a lot of American Bar Association construction forum speaking nationally, and there is a group of lawyers that just, I think I mentioned this to you all previously, that just focus on baseball stadiums, football stadiums, large stadiums, and the amount of involvement to get that project started and to the end game, to project delivery at the end. There's a lot of things that you have to tick off. And it doesn't matter if it's a $15,000 project or $20,000 or $100,000 project or, $200 million project. It's that same formula that
Cadence is
we
the
tick
same.
off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That makes total sense. And that's really what we're talking about here is having a standard process that is followed in order to have a successful outcome, right? No matter whether you're talking about a $5,000 pool project or a $15 million project or building refacing. So, Alex, I'll turn it back over to you for more questions.
Jason, I got a text message here from one of our board members. When is the formal RFP needed versus a simple quote? Like, what do you consider just a formal RFP needed versus just a simple quote to do something?
Yeah. So RFP, request for
Question.
proposal, I refer to RFPs as bid packages.
Okay.
A little bit different. I mean, it's the same, but it's just different vernacular versus a quote, right? So my view of an RFP or a bid package is that it is a well-defined scope of work. And if, for example, if it's a roofing project, then you know what that scope of work is: complete re-roof, partial re-roof, waterproofing repair. Like, it has to identify that full scope. And then it's sent out via an RFP, or bid package for vendors or contractors, subcontractors to bid on. A simple quote is kind of scary to me. So simple quotes to me are something very minor, where you pick up the call and say, hey, I've got this issue with flashing in the corner. I need somebody to come over and just take care of it. That to me is simple invoicing in a quote. More minor maintenance issues is the way I look at it. I don't know how you all look at it, but that's the way I look at it.
If I can jump in, I think usually as an industry, we've determined if it was a simple quote or if it required a full RFP or bid package, based on the amount of what the asset was going to cost to repair or replace. However, I think that's kind of changed because with the sophistication of these boards that I mentioned before, it's not necessarily the amount of the repair, it's what the asset is worth. Right. So I may have a $2,000 pool pump repair, but to replace it, if this goes wrong, we're talking about a $30,000 piece of equipment. So I think that's where we're kind of determining where we need to be more specific on what kind of material do we want them to use, what kind of warranty are we expecting, how long, how much is this going to impact the useful life, right? Of that asset. And I think that's the determining factor. So it's not as cut and dry of like it's over $5,000 or $10,000, we should go to RFP. I think it's more about the value than the cost.
Right. It's what at stake.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's
Go ahead,
funny,
Jason.
actually, you mentioned pool pump because that was a text I just received here. We're doing a $2,100 pool repair with our current pool company. Should we send that out to RFP?
So, I'm gonna be general, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't take me to heart completely, but I would say, what's the useful life remaining on that pool pump piece of equipment? Is it something you're expecting to last you another 10 years? What's the warranty on the first quote that you got from your regular provider? What does that look like? And then are they citing a specific type of equipment, and why are they doing like for like, or is this an improvement? If we're looking at a like for like, you've got 5 years left on the piece of equipment, it's not going to be a long-term investment, then you can probably just get it repaired and move forward. If it's a piece of equipment that you expect to last you much longer than that, and perhaps you're changing a piece of equipment to upgrade or to have a longer useful life, then I think you need to consider getting comparable quotes.
Excellent point. Ashley, I know, Jason, you had a thought you wanted to
Yeah.
mention earlier.
Yeah, exactly. And Ashley raised a good point about the dollar amount. It's not necessarily the dollar amount. For example, you all have experienced water intrusion into your units. You'll have one unit owners complaining about water intrusion through the window or the wall. And at times, it may be a simple repair. You may send a maintenance guy out there to try to figure it out, but you want to make sure it was repaired correctly. And so oftentimes an engineer will go out, try to assess where the water is coming in at, and prepare a specification for repair. Now we're in detail, that's very detailed, because we want to stop the water because it causes damage to the interior of the property and it impacts other units, right? So it depends also to the magnitude of it as to what Ashley was talking about. So it could be something simple where it's like, oh, just call so-and-so out, slap some caulk on it, it'll be fine. Not necessarily. So there's a lot of, I think you spoke about sophisticated board members, but as property managers, whomever else you're working with, you have to have that level of experience to offer up that insight. So
If I can add here, I think that the goal, obviously, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's in the level of sophistication or the complexity of the component that we're going out for bid for, I think what we're talking about is that we all want a successful outcome. And so, from a management perspective, our job is to help our boards make informed decisions. So we need to collect the best data that we can and also make recommendations, be prepared with experience to make recommendations. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we are providing a scope of services. So I think from that perspective, whether it's a proposal, collecting quotes, which I agree with you, Jason, it sort of makes us feel some sort of way when we hear that, depending on again, very small scale versus anything over X amount of complexity. But the idea is that when we're presenting the total packages of whether it's bid packages with proposals in them, how are we going to ensure that we're comparing apples to apples, right? So that there can be an informed decision for a successful outcome, right? So I think that that is really something to really consider. It cannot be a haphazard process because then the result will not be successful.
Mm-hmm. Which is a common problem.
Which is, yes. So
it's
common mistakes to avoid is something I would like for both of you to maybe think about and share a little bit. And that's one of them, right? It's where we get to the process. There's a lot of work and time that goes into collecting proposals. And then there's a failure right at the end because we don't have it right.
Yeah. So if I may, let me just start with like the beginnings of a construction project. So if you've got, let's say it's a roofing project or a concrete restoration, step one is, in my view, is after, management that, look, I'm working on going through all these issues with the roof and leaks and so on and so forth. I really think you need a good construction lawyer to help, number one, frame the project. That person, along with management, should help the client determine appropriate engineers or consultants or professionals to help identify the problem. Say it's a roofing issue. Second, once the engineer is hired or the consultant's hired, which is contracted by the lawyer, right? You need a construction contract or a consulting contract for that. Because if that person is going to prepare specifications, plans, details, they have to follow a standard of care. So what Ashley was talking about is, what materials are you going to use? Why are you using these materials? What is the life expectancy? Can you get a warranty for it? Like all those details in the specification. And then ultimately, when that's done, then it goes out to RFP or a bid package, and then it's sent out. Then you'll have bidders, which we'll talk more about, but generally speaking, you have bidders that come in and they bid the project. And there are a lot of issues with bidding as well, because you don't want them to know each other, because then they start communicating with each other and then they start figuring out how to price it. I'm telling you, this happens all the time. And then they'll say, hey, let my buddy have this one, I'll get the next one. So I'll bid super higher. There's a racket behind a lot of that too. And then finally, apples to apples, that's a huge problem, because all of them that I deal with will deliver a qualified bid, which is not the bid based on the specification and the scope of work that the engineer prepared. They review it and they say, I like that scope, but I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going
My
to do
own
it this way, and it's totally different. And then your numbers are crazy. There's a low number, a high number, and then when you start looking at it, the mistake I see is engineers sometimes just look at the numbers and the board looks at the numbers, but they don't understand that they're completely different
Change
scopes.
the scope, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not apples to apples.
Mhm.
Right.
They're asking me, Jason, do you like to get involved in the scope of work side before it gets sent out for bid? Do you
For
like to
me,
get involved in that? Yes, you.
yeah, I do. I do. And I'll
Okay.
tell you why. Because I litigate these issues, like I'll give you an example. One engineer called for some type of manufacturer for a pool deck, and I had litigated against those manufacturers before, so I knew exactly how that was going to play out. I knew exactly what the performance capabilities were of that particular product. So I spoke to the engineer and I said, why would you specify that product? Why don't you specify another product or take a look at it to determine whether it's the same? And he goes, why? And I said, because you're never going to get a warranty for it. And it's true, you never got a warranty for this other product.
Mhm.
So I do like getting involved in it because I'm thinking about everything that's going to go wrong and how we're going to litigate it. So when you set it up, it's not just to complete it, but if things go wrong, then you're able to deal with it and litigate it. So it's set up the right way from day one. So I do like being involved in that
It
process.
makes total sense, right? And I think it also helps segue into contract terms if and when you get to that phase, which is probably something that we want to touch on. Although we're talking about proposals, it's the inevitable next step, right? Once a decision is made, and kind of a best practice approach would always be to have your attorney review that as well. But I do have a question online that may also clarify potential conflicts when you're gathering proposal. And the question is, can you please share your input and guidelines on how a property manager should handle board recommended vendors that board members personally know or have previously worked with or for during the competitive bid process?
Oh. So,
Jason, this is all you.
yeah.
Is it me or is it Ashley?
Yes, Jason, Jason.
Jason,
It's
Yes,
me?
Jason.
to me, it's more of
Oh,
a legal question than
I was like,
anything else.
Ashley, you answer it. No.
Well, I know what I would say, but let's hear what you would
Okay,
say first.
all right. So number one,
He
inviting your
took off his
friends.
glasses.
I know, but inviting your friends to bid is not a great idea. Number
Yeah.
one, right? That's number one. Number two, it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good, right? It just doesn't look good. Now, sometimes though, they're insistent on bidding. And if it's, proper organization and not some fly-by-night company, bid the project. But everybody needs to understand on the board that so-and-so is friends with so-and-so and they know each other. Like it has to be open and transparent.
Yeah.
And you can't do two bids in that situation because Florida law requires competitive bidding. And they don't necessarily tell you how many bids, they'll say competitive bidding. But I like to get as many bids. Look, there is too many bids, but I like to get 5 bids, as far as the mix.
So that's best practice, 5 bids, because someone
Yeah.
just asked me that question. How many RFPs should we throw out there? How many proposals should we get?
Yeah,
Well, 5
that's my
minimum.
I think for large projects, 5 makes sense. I think for the more practical or smaller projects, 3, it's hard sometimes with how competitive the market is to even get 5 in some cases. But I agree for like larger scale roofing projects, we go 5, sometimes even 7, as part of that process of review. And Zuli, I just want you to know I would have given the same answer as Jason.
You would have. I know you would have.
There was one project I was involved in last year on the beach that it was an underground parking garage that was leaking, and the fix was very complicated, and there were only 1 or 2 entities in Southern United States that could make that repair. So when you're in that level of specialty, that's another thing you got to be careful with is you can't just bring in a general contractor and say, hey, can you make these repairs? Because they're not going to know how to deal with it. That's why you got. So in that situation, we couldn't get as many bids. So you should have enough qualified people to bid.
But Jason and Ashley, I think in those cases, right, sometimes it's because of the expertise required. And it also can be because of something Ashley touched on, which is the competitiveness of maybe it's market specific, right? We're all from different markets and we're representing today on today's call, probably different markets throughout the state and outside of the state. So it can become difficult to find 5 competitive bids on certain projects during certain times of the year or just in general. So I think it's again identifying that early on in the process and then having um, conversations amongst the board and even with your membership so that everyone understands the why behind the process being followed, I think is probably a healthy approach here. Because then you're not running against they did something wrong on purpose or there was some sort of ill intent behind not going out to bid to 5 vendors, as well as allowing enough time. So if you are very sure that you want to have 5 bids or 3 bids on a service that may be difficult, then also allow the time in order for the management team or the board, whomever's seeking these bids, to obtain the competitive bids for that as well.
Really, to that point, I was also thinking it took my thought process goes all over the place, but I was thinking specifically of analysis paralysis that we see sometimes with some boards. So
Point.
we also have to get an amenity back online, right? We also have to make sure the gym is open and the pool is functioning. And so we have to kind of weigh the time constraint of making sure that there is the ability for the residents and the members to enjoy the amenity that they are paying for within a reasonable amount of time versus having something shut down for 3 months because we're trying to collect bids on, to Alex's comment earlier, a $2,100 pool repair. Right. So there has to be a little bit of reason on when we're collecting so many bids. And again, you leverage that with the expected useful life, the cost of the component, and all those other things to determine is it worth the delay in the repair.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Talk about how, you know what I've really noticed that when proposals are sent out there, change orders. The famous game, right? Change
Taboo.
orders. Because a lot of them, I've seen a lot of these proposals come in, these RFPs come in. You got the lowest priced individual. It's really cheap, but they're hoping to create change orders and make up money. But their goal is to get into the problem, and we have to look out for that, right? That's how we look out for our association. Jason or Ashley, this question for both. How do we prevent that? I know we do an apples to apples comparison. And if the apples to apples comparison looks good, how do we prevent all these change orders? Because I see that a lot in the industry.
So usually it is the lowest bidder that's going to have the most change orders. That's a very valid point.
Yeah.
That I've seen. So I think having that conversation as you're going through the bid review process, including making sure that your vendor is including a certain percentage for contingency in there to cover, for example, it's a re-roof. We pulled off the roof. We weren't going to replace trusses, but we are expecting 10% or 15% rot, and replacement is included for that percentage. And then anything in addition to that will be X amount. So ironing out some of those incidentals on the front end, I think is really helpful. And then I think we also have to own as management and as boards when we change our mind, right? When we wrote the scope and we were like, we're going to get a level 1 granite in our new clubhouse.
And now
And then
we've redone the entire clubhouse.
yeah, we looked at the level 1 granite and we were like, no, we need an exotic granite. And then you have to kind of eat that one, right? That's the one that you chose and you changed the scope. So I think it's having a realistic understanding of what your scope of work includes, including the level 1 granite. What do those options actually look like on the front end so that you're not creating the change orders? And then also choosing a vendor. For me, when I'm looking for the vendors that have already thought through the incidentals and included it in the bid. If I have to ask you, then I already know where this train is going.
That's a good point. Jason, what are you seeing on your side?
Same thing, but I would say step one, if you're doing a massive the concrete restoration project, we're using it as an example, your specifications and bid package has to be really precise. Okay, the more detail, the more specificity that's included, the better your project will be overall, right? And reduce the need for change orders because the contractor is looking at it and saying, okay, these are the quantities that I'm responsible for. So for example, in a concrete restoration job, typically an engineer will do an estimate or a takeoff. They will not swing the entire building in advance to determine how much work actually needs to be performed. They won't do that. And the boards, they won't hire them to do it because it'll be 100,000 just to figure all that out, right? So the engineer will do a estimate, but that estimate needs to be as precise as possible. Then when you bid it out, they're basing it on that estimate, but there should be lump sum work, like painting the building, lump sum. We know what the price is, fix it. Lump sum, 500,000 to paint the building, 300,000 to paint the building. Concrete restoration, though, is unit price work. And it's hard because once you start peeling back the layers, you're going to see other issues, and then those quantities start to increase. So long as the board understands that, number one, engineer has to be very precise in the quantity, and number two, engineer needs to be involved in verifying the quantity when the work's being performed. And number three, there might be overages, and if that happens, then they're going to be on the hook for that additional work if it's unit price. So in a concrete job, it's unit price, but try to get lump sum work as much as possible as well to lock in those prices.
Okay, great. Stephen has a question here. How important is warranty? It seems like there are thousands of ways to avoid honoring.
Is that for me or Ashley?
Any of you can respond to this. Well, I think Jason, I think this would be good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question for you.
Yeah, I'll start it off. So warranty is only, depending. If the contractor is a good contractor, they'll honor the warranty. So you should always get a warranty from the contractor. If the contractor is using a subcontractor, you should also get a warranty from the subcontractor as well, if you can. Sometimes you can't, but if you can. Number two, the warranty needs to be for labor and the material supply. So they are standing behind the labor, but also the materials. Why do we want them to stand behind the materials? Because they're purchasing materials directly from a supply house that we can't purchase directly from. So there's a certain contractual relationship with them where they can collect and get the correct materials for the project. So it needs to be two, labor and materials. Number three, manufacturer's warranties. Boards will say, oh my God, I got a manufacturer's warranty. It's fantastic. Don't worry about it. We got a manufacturer's warranty. Manufacturer's warranties, for the most part, aren't worth the paper they're written on. Okay, because they've got a second page to it and it's size 5 font. Nobody can read it and it has every exclusion on the planet, right? So just keep that in mind. Manufacturer's warranties are not. You should always procure one. But at the same time, understand that most of them only cover defective product, not labor and installation. Now, in a roof project, if you can get like a no dollar limit guarantee from the manufacturer, which everybody should reach out and see if you can get that, that may also include labor, and that's important. But there'll still be a bunch of exclusions, but just don't rely on that. Make sure you're entering into an agreement with a good, recognized, experienced contractor.
I think the biggest exclusion that we sometimes miss that has a controllable component is that some of those manufacturers or material warranties are valid once the company comes out and reviews the work at certain stages in the process.
Yep.
And so if you are not having, or your contractor is not having those inspections take place, the warranty is voided from day one.
Yep.
And so I think just the awareness of, like, as they're doing the roof application, there's specific pictures that need to be taken. There's specific inspections that need to take place in order for those materials to have a warranty. I think that's a step that gets overlooked a lot. And then 3 years down the line, you voided your warranty by not taking the right steps on the front end.
Yep.
Great point.
That's where the
I have a
preventive maintenance,
question.
baby.
Online from Catherine. Thank you for the question. Do management companies have to give homeowners estimates from any vendor that will eventually be presented to the board at a duly called meeting for a decision? So basically, what does the statute say around proposals and bids and providing that information to homeowners?
So I think the proposals and bids are available upon a records request. And usually do not need to be provided prior to a board meeting or a decision being made by the board.
Jason, do you want to confirm?
Yeah, no, I mean, generally, again, we talked about this, you need competitive bids. And then generally boards will, two things. One is sometimes boards will have a confidential closed meeting to evaluate certain documents because they don't want any leakage of information to prospective contractors bidding on the job, right? So it's that process, like keeping it close. But I think it's also important to have an open meeting with the membership to go through the rationale and decisions as to why one was selected over another, or even have some of these contractors show up. We're down to the last three. Tell us a little bit about why, who you are, why you want to, work on this project. I think that's
Right.
the more transparent you are, I
The
think the
better
better
it
it
is.
is.
Mhm.
We're definitely pro communication and pro transparency in that manner, Jason. So that's an excellent point. I think the more, again, from a matter of timing, right? We talked about timing. Ashley made an excellent point as to avoiding the analysis paralysis part of this process, but from a matter of timing, also allowing timing for your residents to be informed and to also process the work that's coming ahead. Sometimes there's a cost involved to this. We haven't really touched the whole special assessment or how are we funding these projects, but it impacts their bottom line as well. So always keep your residents in mind when you are going to bid or you're considering a very large project that, we have an obligation to keep them informed and in the know of what's happening.
Yeah, and I think owners are not, in my experience, owners don't really get into the technical details of how it's supposed to function. Like, for example, a pool deck. They want to see concepts at the beginning about how beautiful it looks because that's what they're paying for. Like, what are the colors? What kind of tile? Is it slip resistant? What does it look like, right? But very few of them want to get involved in is waterproofing appropriate, which is what I'm more,
Right.
involved in. Is it going to function and protect the building? But,
Right.
that's what I see.
Thank you both.
Jason, I got a question for you here. How important are performance bonds?
So a performance bond or a surety bond
Yep.
is a bond that is available to a qualified contractor. All right. So when you're bidding on a project, you may ask that that's one of the questions you'd ask. Number one, are you bondable? Do you have a bond? Are you qualified to have a bond? Can you supply a bond?
Mm-hmm.
A performance bond is there in the event that the contractor cannot perform or continue with the work. And they are supposed to, they'll fight you, but they were supposed to step in and complete the job. Okay, that's what a performance bond is for. Now, a lot of people talk about insurance. Well, I have a contractor, they stop coming to the job, they abandon the job, but there's like a commercial general liability insurance policy there. Like, doesn't that cover it? And the answer is no. Commercial general liability policies don't cover construction defects or abandoning the job. That's like damage to the property or bodily injury or death. That's typically what they cover. But a performance bond different because they're supposed to step into the shoes and complete the job, right? So that's different. I think it's very important, but it comes at a cost. So a bond on a project is an additional 2 to 3% that the owner pays for. So I'll give you an example. Project off Brickell, many years ago, pool deck project, client didn't want a bond. It was a $500,000 job. They're like, it's low. We don't need a bond on this. They made that decision. That contractor abandoned the job in the middle of summer and left them with no pool deck and no bond. They didn't pay for it. So that's a nightmare.
An important piece.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, important, Alex. It is important.
Yeah, that's great. Now, in the contract review, are you seeing new verbiage, new details here that's protecting more the GC, the person that's doing the work, than the actual associations? Are you starting to see a trend here where they're trying to protect themselves regarding performance that
Yes,
you are?
I am. Some contractors have gotten very sophisticated in trying to limit their warranty. So, for example, instead of giving you a warranty for 5 years for concrete or waterproofing or whatever it is, you have to negotiate those warranties with them. They will then attempt to further dice it up and say, if we see this, we're not going to warrant that condition. And that's where it gets sticky. And I tell the client, when we're selecting contractors, if we can't contract with your number one contractor because of these terms, you better get ready to move to the second one. All right. So I'm seeing some of that, trying to limit some of the warranties and some of the scope. Number two, trying to limit the bond. They're not willing to give a bond for 5 years. Instead, they'll do it for one because they're on the hook for one. A bond works because a contractor has bonding capacity up to a certain dollar amount. The more projects they take on, then they've expanded or exceeded bonding capacity. So they try to limit that. And then finally, contracts. Some clients, or some clients, not necessarily mine, but some clients will just sign whatever a contractor puts in front of it and tell me about it later, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's
So
horrible.
We understand.
and one other trick. I didn't tell you one other thing.
Mhm.
Some contractors, it depends on who they are. I'm not going to name them, but some contractors, if they can't reach an agreement, they will go behind my back to the board and create dissension and say, your lawyer is horrible and will not enter into this agreement and delaying the entire project and interfere. They have tactics. They will interfere. And then the clients go, what's going on? So you got to educate your client on that because those are those behind the scene tactics. And they're like, you want to get this project out? Just sign here. Well, my lawyer says I can't sign it. Well, that's nonsense. Just sign it. That's what they do.
Right.
Yeah,
And
there's a
again,
there's a
it's a short-term alleged win, which it's not, right? To get that decision made, resolution, and done. But the long term is the liability, the exposure, the potential risk that we are trying to protect from, right? So it's an excellent point, and we see that all the time. It happens.
there's a best practice for that I've even used where a contractor tries to go behind your back, Jason. I just get everybody together in the same room,
Yep.
same Zoom.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right.
And
Yeah.
you'd be surprised how quickly that resolves. And
Excellent
then
point.
Yeah.
yeah, get everybody back in the same room, Zoom, Teams, and work it out. And what is it you have a concern with? And call each other out.
Yeah.
Call each other out.
I think that's
That's
where our
great.
partnership, right, as
Yeah.
having the right management company as your partner to support, right, protecting the association and making sure that we're using wise counsel and we're doing things the right way. Because you're either going to pay on the front end or you're going to pay on the back end.
That's right.
You're going to,
Sometimes, yeah.
go ahead.
No, but sometimes personalities clash too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always an issue in this industry, like especially the legal industry. Because if you get a lawyer who doesn't budge, like I know, like sometimes client will select a contractor and I'll tell them immediately, I'll say, look, that contractor has this lawyer. So typically, you know, X dollar, I'm just throwing numbers, a $5,000 or $10,000 contract is going to turn into like 30,000. You realize that. I'm just letting you know. Because there's so much nonsense and fighting. And so they need to be aware of that. And in those situations, sometimes what I'll do is just have the engineer, like you said, like Alex, you put them all in a room. Sometimes just have the engineer who has a relationship with the contractor work out those fine details
Mm-hmm.
and then send me the fine details and just put it in the contract.
Yep.
You know, so you got to figure out how to maneuver, which you all are good at, right? Because dealing with so many personalities, you got to figure out how to get a deal done the right way.
Alex, I thought we had an insurance question here. I know you spoke about the bond, but beyond that, did I miss it?
There was an insurance question. I did see it.
No, keep going and I'll find it.
What are you seeing AI in this process being in the future when it comes to Rick has a note here he wants to mention is that do not put all your trust in AI. generated for bid proposal analysis. What are you seeing?
I think on the management side, AI has been a nice tool to pull out information or to specify differences. But I will tell you specifically with my team, that's exactly what it is. It's a tool. Everything needs to be reviewed and then even tested. I call it testing your AI, right? So um, if my manager has a few proposals that they're reviewing, they can get a summary from AI on what the differences may be, but I still expect them to have their own summary. And then in many cases, depending on the scope, we actually will escalate that internally for review within our team, our engineering department, our district managers. It's really important that we still keep that human touch. Sometimes the devil's in the details, right? And we really want to make sure that we're looking at the details and that those things aren't missed because we're relying on technology.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, for me, I hate AI. I just detest it, you know? So for my team, no AI. That's it. I mean, and look, I get because it's legal, right? So it's different.
Makes
I
sense.
mean, my view is that we are AI because you specialize. If you specialize in an area, you should know everything about the area, right? You should know the ins and outs of the area and how it works and why you need something versus another. But that if what I find though is that boards love AI and they'll do a chat GPT analysis and send it over, and I'm like, here we go, right? And it's just, I mean, it's fine, but I think it's good for them to just issue spot stuff because it'll issue spot, well, this and that. But, you know, Florida has a body of law and construction that is very detailed all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court and also US Supreme Court, right? So one word, it's just one word in opinion hinges on yet right or wrong answer, just one little word. And so that's the thing I don't like about AI and, we don't use it, but I could see the use for it. I mean, I could see, issue spotting and for the board, but it's annoying. I got to tell you, let's just be honest.
So
Well, we can
AI
have-
goes to Jason,
Exactly.
budget first, and then delivers a message.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we can have like a post-apocalyptic webinar on how AI, no one saw iRobot, and then that's really how I feel about AI.
Right.
But that's a whole other webinar that we could do.
Somebody was telling me the other day that there was a contract that they had sent over to another lawyer across the country. The lawyer popped it into AI, and AI populated a bunch of like questions and
Oh, boy.
pitfalls and all the rest of it, which was funny to me because you have two generalists who don't litigate, theoretically talk to each other about hypotheticals they've never been involved in. And that's the difference, right? So if you get lawyers or, for example, managers that have never been through a construction project, then it's all a hypothetical. It means
Right.
nothing,
Right.
It really, it's not helpful, I don't think.
Right.
There's a question that came in here regarding past performance. So we're at the table, we open up all the RFPs, and everything's done per Florida statute. How do you evaluate past performances of these individuals, these contractors?
Good question.
So there's a reference check process, right? Like, so we want to know where else they've worked, what other projects they've worked on. With us specifically, we have very good vendor relationships in each of our regions. So some are across the state, some are region specific, but really just leveraging the experiences of our team is one of the resources that we definitely use internally here. As a matter of fact, all of our managers are in contact and discussing performance of pool companies, performance of a roof project, which vendor was helpful, where they were able to find value optimization opportunities. And so I think it's really important to know your network and leverage the strengths of your management company and your colleagues in that way. And Southwest Florida specifically is a little niche, and there's people who have been here a really long time who have just created great reputations that you can work off of. And then there's also the other end of that spectrum, right? So I think leveraging the talent and the experience of your team is something that having the right management company really helps with. And then outside of that, because you want to give everyone a fair shake and an opportunity to build that same reputation that some of those legacy vendors may have, is just doing that really thorough reference check and following that up with on-site visits. So with things like we're going for an RFP for landscape and there's these contractors, we do encourage our managers, and whether it's their landscape committee or board, to visit some of those properties that are referenced as their references to see the condition of the turf and to kind of look at those specific things. Hey, we did a great clubhouse remodel. Call my friend Claude. He's going to give you a good reference. Well, did anyone actually go to the clubhouse and see if it was remodeled in the last 10 years? So I think, just being thorough and
Thoroughly vetting.
yeah,
Right.
and just really vetting.
Yeah, that is the toughest part of it all, though, right? And I just looked up a quote because I heard it recently, and Warren Buffett says you can't make a good deal with a bad person. So it doesn't matter what your contract says. And sometimes,
It's an impossibility, isn't it?
yeah, and sometimes like I'll send a contract over to the contractor and they will immediately sign it and send it back. And that kind of scares me a little bit, right? Because there were no comments, which then my thought was, are they even planning on abiding by the contract? Like the paper doesn't mean anything to them, right? And so bad people, they don't care what it is. They'll agree to anything, but they're not going to follow it.
Yeah.
They will not follow it. So when it comes down to contractors, engineers, integrity matters. It's the integrity and whether they're a good person, whether they're going to stand by their work, whether they're going to make it right. And that goes for everyone. Lawyers, like, are they going to make it right? Or contractors, engineers. And that's the key, because it doesn't matter what's written in the contract. And then the other thing is, sometimes I'll meet people wherever, out and about. They're like, yeah, I do work. I'm a contractor. Can you get me involved in this project so I can bid? And I'm like, I don't even know who you are, right? Like, I don't, like, how, it's qualifications, right? We're not friends. We are looking for qualified people to do the work. It's straight business, right? Oh, but I know so-and-so and so-and-so. And I'm like, I just don't care. Like, and I guess that rubs people the wrong way, but it's a business and you need qualified people. I mean, I know everybody's heard this. It's just so many people trying to get in and bid that are not qualified on projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And AI would never be able to do that.
No.
The human side of it, right?
Right.
Well, in true form, Alex, we're getting close to the hour.
We are.
So we have so many great questions still to cover.
One of the we recently did a very large project out of property, and out of there was 4 bids that went out, 4 RFPs. Out of the 4, 3 were from our current property manager, and 1 was somewhere else. And the manager went to those 4 board members, those properties, and spoke to the board members to talk about their experience with the specific contractor. And you're able to get a lot of information just by doing that. How was the experience? Did they keep their word? Were there a lot of change orders? And they set up a meeting. I mean, they took a lot of time really because it was a $5 million, $6 million project.
Proactive.
And they sat down with those individuals, the managers, the board members, and asked, can you tell me a little bit about contacted people they knew that lived in that building? And you would be able to get some serious information, some really good information just by doing that.
That's a great idea. I'll add another thing is, number 1, always check licensure. Find out who the actual qualifier for the general contractor is. Like, who is that person, right? Are they qualified? And number 2, the person showing up at the bid proposals and sounds fantastic in front of the board and is selling everybody on their services is probably not the person that's going to be the project manager on site. You need to meet the project manager, because your project's only going to be as good as the project manager. And so sometimes I will include who is the project manager. We need to meet them. We need to see who it is. And then I'll include it in my contract. Project manager shall be this person. And if that person is removed, another approved person, because there's a relationship. So, and that's important.
Before we finalize the session, we didn't really touch on the decision making too much, and I'd like to just highlight that, Jason and Ashley, if you can add a little bit. What I have found in the past, especially when we're going into properties that we're trying to find historical information, where they do all of this work and down to the decision, and then there's just not enough information the day of the meeting, in the minutes, how the decision was made, the nuances or details of how the project was to move forward. And so I think that's another missed opportunity for a lot of associations, is when they meet as a board and they make those decisions, how important it is to properly document.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add that, and I keep going back to like leveraging the resources, getting the details on the front end, using the experts, bringing your attorney in, bringing your engineer in, and then also having the detailed minutes as you're having these conversations and the detailed correspondence going back and forth as you're making changes to the scope and why you changed the scope, why you changed a material, why you changed the timeline on what the expectation was for the project, because 2 years down the line, no one's going to remember. The people who made those decisions may not still be at the table,
Exactly.
and no one's going to remember why the decisions were made or how we landed the plane there, right? And so detailed minutes and then that continuity with your team to make sure that you have all of the records retained in the right place in a format that can be used in the future.
And it's going to make it cheaper
Yeah.
at the end of the
Yes.
day, because if you have to litigate an issue,
Mhm.
there is a lot of legal cost involved in trying to uncover the facts.
Mhm.
And it is, I'm not talking about 10, 20, I'm talking about months of just trying to uncover
Overtime.
the true facts of the project and what happened, because a case depends on the facts,
That's right.
right? And who's right and who's wrong. So
And
that's
so
critical.
a real practical tidbit that managers and boards can use is when we're discussing a specific project, keeping the subject line the same, property name, name of project, and then whatever detail you want to add. But that creates an easy way to search that chain of information.
Continuity, right?
Yeah, as you're working through or once the project is over.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
advice.
one thing I've learned is just focus on performance, past performance. Don't focus on price.
Mhm.
Focus on performance and be transparent during this whole process. Be transparent. There's nothing easier than being transparent.
Yep.
So
So,
all right.
Alex, I have just one quick
Sure.
summary, and then I'll turn it over to you to close us off. So, really, from my perspective, it's what we talked about today is we have to first define the need. It's very important.
Yep.
We talked about building a clear scope, whatever that scope may mean to you,
Apples, apples.
inviting qualified vendors and partners to really address and assess the need and how to get us to that end result. And then comparing proposals fairly, right? So creating a process and a cadence to where you're comparing those proposals fairly. And then documentation, we just talked about that, how important the documentation is, not just to the decision and making informed decisions for the project, but in continuity for the association records for the future. It could save you thousands, and it could also save you incredible liability as well. And not least, but last but not least, it's just make sure that in your contract terms, you're looking at reviewing insurance requirements before any work begins. That is so important.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really touch a whole lot on that, but that could be its own topic,
Yeah.
right? If we really wanted that to be. And then encourage attendees to develop a repeatable proposal checklist. So whether it's your management team, whether it's you as a board, or you have a committee, sometimes it's committees who are working on this. Please have a checklist that you are working from. That way, you have a good cadence that you're following. So thank you from my perspective. And Alex, I'll turn it over to you.
Jason, Ashley, it was truly a pleasure having you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I look forward to our next one because I know there's a lot of questions coming in that we haven't answered.
I know.
I think we're gonna have to do this again.
It could be another 2 hours easy.
Yeah.
Oh
We're
yeah.
in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can easily.
It's a great
And
session.
yeah, and on behalf of KWPMC, we appreciate you participating. Looking forward to seeing you in our next month's webinar. Remember, keep the date, June 18th. June
Thank you,
18th is our
guys.
next webinar.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.